Okay, hello and welcome to our little webinar. My name is Burns, or actually it's Bernhard, but you can call me Burns. They call it me Burns since high school, because probably know there's this Johnny Cash song, "Burning Ring of Fire," and it burns, burns, burns. And I used to sing that all the time as a kid, and that's why they call me Burns. And I have the honor and the pleasure to be your host of this webinar of the art of storytelling. And I'm not alone. I'm here with my good old friend Moritz.
Yeah, hello. Actually, Burns, I didn't know the story of your nickname. I heard it for the first time. That was really, really nice to hear. Yeah, Burns and me, we both of us from Austria, and yeah, very happy to be able to offer this webinar to you tonight.
And we're not only Austrians, we are both students in different towns, but both students doing different stuffs. And we're not students, not only students, but we're also part of a little group called Generation Earth. And Generation Earth, what is that actually? Here in Austria, we are like a little youth network. And the youth network from WWF of Austria. You probably know about WWF Austria or WWF. It's like a natural environmental protection organization. And here in Austria, we actually have like a little youth network. And we're a group, a bunch of people, of all kinds of people, of all ages. And we all are like bound by this feeling we want to change something in the world. We want to do something good in the world and connect people with nature and connect people with themselves, and also help them, especially young people, help them on their way. And in a lot of ways, this is also something we have in common. This is something you and the Scouts also have. And I think there's a lot of it's the same things going on there. And and I hope we also can give you some help and tricks now for this webinar and with this webinar. And we're actually gonna teach you today the art of storytelling, or we try to get you started with storytelling. And yeah, so this is the art of storytelling. And we're gonna begin with a little question. I'm gonna ask you, Moritz, why do we as humans, the humankind, why do we actually tell stories to each other?
Yeah, why do we tell stories? So basically, the short answer is because we used to do so since our very beginnings. When our ancestors sat around the fire, they didn't tell facts and they didn't tell the latest news from the TV show, but they told actually stories of what they had experienced during the day. And this is why stories came to be really important over the whole evolution of mankind. And it didn't change. People still love stories. And if we look at movies, for example, movies are nothing else than a story supported by visual and acoustic media. So whatever, or maybe it's a computer game that also consists of stories. So we constantly confront ourselves with stories because we love them. And that's basically why we tell stories and why we can be affected by stories very easily. And that's also why it's such a powerful tool. And well, if we talk about how much impact does storytelling actually have, let's have a look at advertisement, for example. If we watch TV, for example, and we see an ad on TV, they always tell a story. They never say, this is the best product, or our product is the best one because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They always tell a kind of story, no matter if it's the latest ketchup commercial that tells a funny story, or if it's a car commercial that also um, kind of, you know, uses a story to explain why the car is so important. So the biggest companies in the world have realized that stories are really powerful to influence people and to kind of facilitate where their ideas and minds go. But not only advertisement, also politicians um, are using storytelling. And one of the most famous storytellers, or maybe one of the most famous speakers of this time, is Barack Obama. And if you look at the history of how he became famous and how he made it to the position of being president of the United States, you will soon realize that there was this one speech that he held in the early years of the third century, how do you say, the 21st century. And during that speech, he told a couple of different stories. So he knew that this was the most important speech he'll ever deliver. This was the one speech that shot him up to being well known from a man that was previously hardly known by anyone. And he used stories to do so, and it worked. These stories really made him popular and famous. And this made his way, prepared his way to the White House at the end of the day. And also, if we look at the most famous speech of all time, the most famous speech of all time, what could it be? It's "I Have a Dream" from Martin Luther King. Yeah, I have a dream. And if you look at this story, if you analyze his speech, you'll realize that he uses stories as well, that he tells stories during the speech. So these two examples for me really well explain why storytelling is so important, because some of the most influential people in the world use it in order to reach their goals. That's basically why we tell the stories.
So, Moritz, this was really nice information you told us there, really nice things. But who are actually these storytellers you're talking about?
Yeah, so that is the big question. Do these gifted storytellers just drop down from the sky and is Barack Obama, Steve Jobs, and Martin Luther King, are these guys born with the gift of storytelling? And are so many other people not born with the gift of storytelling? And the answer is no. So if we look at children, for example, every child tells stories. Every child tells stories all of the time. If you ask them, how was your day? They'll tell you a story of what happened. Maybe they found a frog when they went outside and they were amazed by the frog. So they'll tell you a story of what the frog did. So as children, all of us are storytellers. We're naturally born, gifted storytellers. But over the course of our life, many of us lose it. Some of us don't. There are people who never really lose it. Probably all of you have one of these people in your circle of friends. There are those people who like to, maybe they're kind of the liars. At least these are people who tell lots of stories. They never lost it. But many people did lose it. But doesn't mean that you cannot find it again. It actually means that everyone can find it again and learn how to be a great storyteller. That's basically the message, that everyone is a great storyteller, has this within him or herself. And this is what we want to show you during this webinar. And Burns is an amazing storyteller. He actually wrote books, and I think his whole life consists of stories, and he learned a lot about the theory of stories, and that's why he's going to explain you in way more detail what a good story needs. So Burns, what are the tips for storytelling?
Thank you, Moritz. Thank you also for your very kind and nice words. Really, thank you. I forgot something in the beginning. If you have questions for us, please put them on the platform. We'll try, or Moritz tries then to answer them if we can see them. Sorry, we haven't done this before, this kind of webinar. Yeah, are there tips for storytelling? Yeah, the biggest tip or trick I can give you actually is that you look around, because stories are everywhere. You can see stories in television, you can see stories in movies, you can have like really nice and beautiful and important speeches, for example. But also, this is maybe the most important storyteller of all, look at nature. Nature is one of the greatest storyteller in the world. There's so many things going on in the wild, little dramas, little action movies, every time, everywhere. And just maybe listen or look at them carefully, and you get inspired, you get amazed and inspired by that. And it helps you creating your own worlds, maybe, or your own stories. And I mean, this is just one say, just do it is just one way to tell you to make stories, to create stories. But what about getting started? Sometimes it's actually very hard for me as well to write a story or make a story happening. And I always compared it to, building a house. A house is a very complicated thing, There's like this roof that has to be attached on everybody, on everything. There needs to be walls that needs really be too sturdy. They need to be weatherproof. There should be no rain going through, no snow going through. And building a house for yourself, wow, that's that's something really difficult to do. And the same way I looked at stories before, how could I ever, when I read a story, like a big fantasy story, how could I ever create something like that? How could I ever do something like that? And then I started actually with a little help from some guides and other storytellers who made some books about that. I learned to look closer on these stories. And like houses, every story has like a foundation. There is like something on the bottom that is the base of everything else. And everything else is built on that base. And this base is all the same in every story. And you can look at these different parts of the base. There's the setting, there's the action in your story, there's the style of your story, and there's the journey of the story, or there's a message of the story. These are different parts of the story, and every story in the whole world has these parts of it. And looking at these different parts and looking at stories in this way, that they have this foundation, this bottom, this base, you can actually you can actually help yourself getting started by asking yourself these following 6 questions about your story. You can ask yourself about the setting. By setting, I mean, what are actually my story's characters? So what is my hero? Is there a villain in my story? Is there like a mentor in my story? I used to tell stories with mentors all the time back in the days because I liked the idea there's something guiding my hero in my story. What is the world about? Is it like a natural world, or is it taking place in a city, in a town? And what are the rules of my world? And is there like magic in my world, in a fantasy world? Or is there like something science fiction parts in there? Is there like, laser guns or something like that? Or like anything really? And you can ask yourself these questions about your story. You can also ask yourself about the action of your story. So by action, I mean actually this is the so-called red thread, they call it in German. In Austrian, it's called der rote Faden, which is red thread. It's like the way things go in my story. So what could, you can ask yourselves, what could my characters be doing in your story? For instance, I'm right now holding this webinar with you and having this webinar with you. This is an action happening. And I can tell a story where the hero is holding like this webinar with you. And asking yourself this, what is they actually doing? This could be really, yeah, really cool, nice question you can ask yourself about stories. Then you can ask yourself about the style of your story. By that mean a lot of things. I mean, you can ask yourself, what is the threat? So what is the danger in your story my hero could go against? There could be like a real villain, like an enemy, like in Generation Earth, we actually want to fight against, climate change, and also a little bit against the people who are behind this climate change. A little bit, not like real like real fighting, but going against the ideas that are behind capitalism, etc., etc. And this is a real threat. This is something in the outside we want to go against. And my hero in my story can go against this threat as well, this danger. But it also can be a threat inside of yourself. We all are human, and we all have feelings and emotions. And sometimes we feel fear, and sometimes we feel sad for something. We feel sometimes we feel anger, and sometimes that's the real danger, that our inner feelings, and that we are not can actually deal with them. That could be also like a big part of your story. Or you can ask yourself about the ending of your story. Which end could my story have? There could be, my hero saves the day, gets the prize ending, the happy ending, where everything is fine, everything is good. The so-so ending, the mixed bag ending, so it's okay ending. There are some good things happened, there are some bad things that happened. It's okay. And then there's also the bad ending, the bad ending where everything seems, this didn't work so well. So this everything is like, actually in the end, like a catastrophe is actually everything is bad in the end. But a bad ending, having a bad ending in your story, that isn't that bad at all. I mean, like Greenpeace, for example, another organization, uses bad endings all the time to make other people, to warn other people about something. If you do that, bad things happen to you. If you exploit nature, bad things going to happen to you and the world and the planet. So bad endings in your stories can give you a really good message sometimes. And you can talk about the journey. So I talked about the action of your story, in the story. And the action sometimes has some twists and turns and ups and downs. It's not that just a square line, it's going this way and that way and everywhere. And yeah, having these ups and downs in your story, it's good. The red thread, I told you earlier, goes this way and that way, everywhere. And what I mean by journey, I mean also about how the whole story feels. You see this green tree here, which symbolize the day side, and this darkish black tree here, which symbolizes the night side. And what I mean by that, the night side is where you actually feel like danger and fear for your character. So you don't know if there's like a bad ending, or is he going to survive, or is she going to survive this scenario? Is she or he is going to succeed, or what is going to happen next? What's happening next? This is the night side, where you don't know what's happening. In the day side, you feel the opposite way. You feel like, oh, it seems rather nice. It's actually really nice right now. And my hero is also really brave and fine, and everything seems good. And well, I'm not actually worried anymore. I think everything works out, is happy ending in the end. And then it goes back in the night side again. Oh, again, fear. Everything is bad. Everything is dark. You don't know what's happening. And storytellers often use that, just jumping around, day side, night side, day side, night side, to make it really exciting story. So maybe you can also think of the ups and downs in your story, make it more spicy. And then, last but not least, there is the message. And by message, we actually mean, can other people learn something new from my story? This is something we in a generation of really, really like, we're thinking about it a lot, because we want to change something in the minds of people, and we can only do that by thinking about the message. We actually thinking, okay, is this something, is this something relevant? Is this something people need? Or is this something we can give people what they don't have, for example? Is this a moral in the story that they probably gonna need in any way? So thinking about the message is also very important for your story, because in lots of stories, there is no message. It's just the entertaining value. And is it just entertainment? This is the television Hollywood thing. But especially with Generation Earth and like acting the change and something like that, message is really, really important stuff. Thinking about a message. And when you do your own stories, you create your own stories, you maybe come up with a message for yourselves, and it helps you also getting the story ahead. And everything else, these are the only parts, and everything else is just details in a lot of ways. It comes to your mind naturally. All right, speaking of message, we're coming to an end, and really abrupt end. Thank you for listening. And I hope our message, because we wanted to actually reach you guys, and giving you something at home, so you can maybe start telling your own stories also. Maybe you get some inspirations from us. Thank you. If there are any questions right now, we can maybe answer them.
Yeah, thanks for listening so far. And I'm also happy to hear questions. Yeah.
Okay.
Do you want me to help you with some questions? Maybe we encourage people to continue leaving their questions in the box. I have one here that I think is a comment from Rob Johnson, which I found very important to mention. That he says, I'm a scout leader, and he finds that adventures that he has in his scouting career provides him with many stories from his camping, hiking, and many more. I think that's totally true. And what can you tell us from, have you wrote yourself some stories from your own experiences?
Yes, I actually did. I actually started writing my first novel during a trip. So I was in Norway, and I made like a big hike through Norway, through all kinds of different landscapes in Norway. And I was so amazed by the beauty of Norway. There was these mountains, and there's just downside of the mountains, there's the ocean. I didn't know that. I mean, we have a similar like landscape here in Austria, but it's just lakes and not the ocean. There's the actual ocean right to these mountains. And I was so amazed by that. And all just the light, and it was like all day. We were in the summer there, so all day there was this light, and wow, it was just such an amazing feeling. And I had this urge, there was this inner feeling I had. I want to write these feelings down in some way. And when I started writing, I thought of these fairy tales, what they tell these fairy tales in Norway. And I thought about like these trolls and these different, these creatures there in this fairy tale, these different kinds of trolls and goblins and everything. And I thought of a dwarf. I thought of a little dwarf who is actually writing himself a little book. And so I started my own like saga, and it became a really long fantasy novel in the end.
Awesome.
I would really like to reinforce what Bern said. I think it's so important to um, package your experience into stories. For example, when I tell people that I don't use flashlights at night, I don't just tell them that I don't use flashlights at night because that and that and that, but I actually tell the story of how it came. Also, when I coincidentally, it also happened to me in Norway. That story that led to me not using flashlights at night because I realized that I can see much more without a flashlight. It was this great experience back then. So yeah, I really agree with Burns that I really tell lots of stories about my experiences, especially being outside.
Of course, yes. Thank you so much. I have here another question that I found very interesting, and maybe you can give our audience some tips. Basically, she's or he is asking, what can I do when I have a creative block? I can imagine that this happens very often, and what would be your tips on this?
So my way of dealing with creative blocks is actually I can't force myself either. So sometimes I have this, I just let it down for this moment. So when I have these blocks as well, I don't write at all. I try to don't think about it at all. So I also do just something else. I try to do something maybe even physical and try to work out or something like that and not think of it at all. And when I come back to it, it feels more fresh, you know, it feels more fresh and my mind is freshed out again. And yeah, also, if you don't know how you want to actually go on with your story, if that's the uh, creative part of the block is there, um, it's also I also try to get more inspirations from other works and different stuff. So um, I, for instance, always like to read another novels from other people's and other storytellers when I get a block. So I get reimagined or re-inspired by things, and how I just get these pictures in my head again, and they will go yeah, all this way back to my own ideas, my own original ideas. So yeah, to sum it all up, I think sometimes you can just wait out these blocks, but you can do something in the meantime.
Thank you so much. There's here another question from Anna. She's asking, can we use storytelling as a method of reflection, evaluation after training or youth exchange, or what would you say about that?
Yes, definitely. So I think there are two different levels. On one level, you can use the story as a facilitator of, like, tell the story of a moment when it was really important for you to reflect on something. And then use this as an introduction for the participants to reflect on the training, for example, whatever happened. And the second level is also using using the story, like letting the participants tell a story in order to reflect on what they had experienced.
Here's another interesting question that I think is related to another one we had is, this person is saying, I work with children between the age of 5 and 10 during camps. They always want me to tell them a story before bedtime that I can make up just then. Can you give me some tips how to come up with a good story out of nowhere? And this is very related to another question that we had, is that how can I make a conversation interesting? I can get them to be engaged.
You want to answer that, Moritz, or should I?
Well, it's a tricky question. Do you have a prepared answer, Burns, or should I? So,
whatever.
So I think, phew, like referring to the bedtime stories, I think it's a good idea if you made the experience that that you do this oftentimes, and you know that the kids want to listen to stories. It might be a good idea to just have a little collection of stories that you can tell. Or maybe a storybook. Maybe you work with the same children all the time and they want to hear another story every time. It's a good idea to have a little storybook to just read from, I would say.
Yeah, and also actually, I'm thinking back of the days when I told stories to my little sisters when they were littler, like a little bit more little than now, and I also came up with the idea there. Actually, then when I tried to come up with something and I got like this, oh, okay, I don't know how to go on now. I'm just completely blank. They came up with ideas. So they told me, you know what should happen now? This and that, and he should could say that and that. And what I actually tried to do with them back in the day, and it worked out perfectly, it could work for you as well, is making stories with them, thinking of stories with them, and this kid's also very interactive and very nice. So yeah, it could be that these are the kids are actually up for it and want to do that. Yeah.
Thank you. That's a great idea. Here we have just quick questions. We have some participants asking if they can get the presentation after this. Are you guys okay if I share it with them as a PDF? Because some of them, they're saying that they will also even like to translate it. And just to people to know, this session will also be recorded in our JOTI.info webpage, so you can go over again on the whole session. We have a question here on what is the best setting to tell a story, or does it depend on the story?
Well, my favorite setting to tell a story definitely is the campfire. Um, but I think almost any setting is a good setting to tell a story. I personally believe that stories belong everywhere. Maybe not when the house is on fire and you need everyone to get out of the house in order so that no one dies. Um, might not be the very best situation to start telling a story. But other than that, when there's not a lot of stress, I think it's good to tell stories first just to entertain people, but also to teach something. You know? Teach from an experience that you have made, and it might be much stronger than just telling people that whatever, they shouldn't go too close to the edge because you could fall down. You know? You can tell them the fact or tell them actually of someone that it happened to. And in that case, it will be much more powerful, I believe.
I agree with that totally. The only one thing I want to add is it's most of the time you can really actually do this. The only exception I would say, not telling a story maybe if you feel that the crowd, the people or anybody in the people is not buying this story in a lot of ways. So in, I don't know, like in some of scientific way or something like that, people um, don't want to hear a story now, a fact, something like that. But all of them, it works kind of fine. It's actually really cool to make facts like more interesting with stories. I did it in my school days, back in the days. I told a story about the Archaeopteryx, a dinosaur, at my scientific works. But sometimes people are not buying that. They say, okay, wow, this has nothing to do with science and now and there could be a moment where it doesn't work that well, but most of the time I would say it works.
Thank you so much. We have, can you please say that how will be a start of a story?
Or you start a story, I think.
A story. How can you start a story?
Okay. Yeah, again, I think you can't actually force yourself to start a story. Also, it comes naturally. So for instance, when I wrote some ideas and stories already, I haven't started actually most of the time with the beginning with a story, but I began somewhere in the middle with some cool idea or something like that. And the whole thing, it's like a puzzle. It comes together later on. And yeah, again, I, as I said already, I started with inspiration. So every time I have the feeling I have to do something right now and write something down. And if you want to actually write your own story or do your own story, create your own story, yeah, try to active listen and try to witness as much stories in the world as you can. And maybe you get inspired one day to do it your own, and then it comes naturally to us, to you. So yeah.
And
That's right.
There's one very general thing that I again want to reinforce that Bernhard just said. One advice that I always give people when they ask of how can you become a great storyteller, and the thing that I always say is listen to great storytellers and listen how they tell the stories. It's really hard to tell all the theory of it just in a 30-minute webinar. And I think the best thing to do is just to go out there, open YouTube, maybe listen to a TED Talk. They don't necessarily tell stories on purpose. They basically speak because they want to speak a certain subject, but they use stories in their talks a lot. And also go out. I'm sure that in your Scouts community, there will be good storytellers that you can learn a lot from. So just listen to them and see how they tell their stories. I think that's really important advice.
Thank you so much. That's very interesting. Here we have some people asking, where are you guys from? And if you can tell a bit more on what's Generation Earth.
Yeah. Who should answer, Burns?
You're the founder of Generation Earth. So
I'm not the founder. I'm maybe one of the founding members. So Burns and me, both of us come from Austria, Europe. And Generation Earth started approximately almost 10 years ago, basically as a collection of 6 teenagers who wanted to change the world but didn't know how. And we found each other and started this young group that it wasn't even called Generation Earth back then. It had a very complicated name. And we found WWF Austria to support us, which was really great because they offered lots of resources for us that we could use, expertise. They offered materials, the car that we used for our trainings, and so on. And so basically what Generation Earth does is to provide the opportunity for young people to learn about how to make the world a better place. And we offer this opportunity by offering trainings on one hand, so that people can actually learn how to change the world. And on the other hand, we offer let's call it a safe space where people can implement their projects supported by the Generation Earth community and by experienced Generation Earth members. So in order to make their projects really have an impact. And Generation Earth currently is mainly located in Austria, but at the moment we're spreading a lot. And there's a Generation Earth program starting in Portugal, for example. And there are other parts of Generation Earth starting to pop up in other parts of the world. And we have lots of connections to Asia, I think to South America as well. So it's growing at the moment. yeah, that's basically the very, very, very short story of Generation Earth.
Awesome. That sounds very familiar for us, which mostly of us are scouts, and we're totally partnering right now, I believe, because we are all trying to create a better world and try to do some things different and change the world. That's our main goal. We have a question from Jack, who's asking, do you do this as a job, or is something you do like in your free time?
Yeah, it's free time. It's voluntarily work right now, so we do it in our free time privately. But yeah, we're already working. I mean, I'm part of the steering team of Generation Earth, and we're already working that maybe Generation Earth can be, like a connection platform, also for people to connect with people who can give our members jobs in the future, maybe where they can find jobs in the future. So we have some connections with WWF, for example, and they can always like posting or offering like different positions, and people can like apply for that. And yeah, we're working on that. That's a little bigger right now, and yeah, but right now it's solely voluntarily work.
Okay, so you guys are not scouts, right?
No, actually not.
We had that question from someone from the audience, but maybe you guys can consider and join us. But again, we are all trying to reach the same goal, but still, you have the opportunity.
Actually, I am just about. I'm in the process of talking to the scouts in Austria, and will probably attend a national meeting in May if it can take place.
Awesome. Can you, just to wrap up and finish, we have some people asking how can they contact you, and if you have a web page or maybe an Instagram or Facebook web page where they can contact Generation Earth or yourself, if you can share with us.
Yeah, we have a web page, so Generation Earth .at, I think it is.
AT.
Yeah, sorry.
GenerationEarth.at.
AT. And we also have a Facebook page, Generation Earth. Just type in Generation Earth and you find it. You see the hand symbol. And also Instagram. We are also on Instagram if you want to do it this way. And if you actually want to contact us, you can also ask maybe your scout leaders or your leaders to reach out for us. They have our contacts. So if you want to ask us too some questions, please do that over them, or maybe just ask one of Generation Earth. They are also like a social media team on social media, for example, and they're gonna answer you perfectly.
Thank you so much. A last question from Ears is asking, should I write down my campfire stories or just improvise the details? What would you suggest?
I think both is great, and I think it's a good idea to find your own style, maybe. As far as I can see, Burns is more the kind of person that writes down his stories. I'm more that kind of person who tells the stories, and sometimes they work well, and sometimes I realize that it didn't work, and I have to kind of modify it so it works better the next time. So I think it's really up to you and what works better for you.
And I would say that also it comes with practice. Only when you start practicing over and over again, you will get to that point that maybe the stories will just come with the flow and you would not even need to write down.
And I also wanted to say, stories can be told in a lot of mediums. There are people who are telling stories with just a picture. So think also about that when you think about your own storytelling style. That's there are all kinds of different mediums. There are people I know that are amazing storytellers with movies, for example, or filming something. And yeah, sometimes that can be your way of storytelling. You don't have to be a writer or a good rhetorical guy or girl. Doesn't matter actually. There are so many different kinds of mediums you can tell stories. And yeah, just look out and try things out, and maybe something works out for you.
Thank you. Okay, so finally, again, can you repeat where they can reach you on social media and maybe a email where they can contact you directly?
Mm-hmm. So our website is generationearth.at, and on social media you can find on Facebook, definitely you can find us just looking up Generation Earth, and you will find the logo that you can also see on the slide in the presentation here. And what else is there? There's Instagram, Burns, right? And what else?
I think there's also a link, and when you go to WWF Austria, there's also like a page where you find, okay, Youth Network, Generation Earth. There's also a link provided for you, so you can come to our website. And on our website, you see everything there. You see all different projects, what are going on, what happened in the past, and our calendar, what's going to happen in the next few days. Yeah.
Yeah. And then there's the email address that you can also use, of course. That's info@generationearth.at. And if you write emails there, it will be directly, or it can be directly forwarded to us.
Can you repeat it once again, please?
Yes, info@generationearth.at.
Thank you so much. So guys, we have come to the end of the session. Can you please just leave us with your final words and maybe encourage people to on the importance on why to tell the story and some final tips that you can share from yourselves.
Yeah, well, from my side, as I said, no one, well, all of us are born storytellers, and if you want to find this gift again, practice storytelling. I think it's just an amazingly powerful tool that's not just powerful, but it's a lot of fun to tell stories and to realize that people are actually listening. It's totally silent because people are so captivated by your story. And once you reach that point, you know that you're a great storyteller. And so I think just keep practicing and you will enjoy it no matter what the medium of your preference is. And yeah, other than that, I'm really happy to have been able to be part of this program, be part of the JOTI. And thank you very much for participating.
And I also want to say some last words if I can. What Moritz said in a lot of ways, and also, yeah, keep listening. I mean, keep listening to each other, and also keep listening to stories in the world. Even if it you don't start actually with storytelling, you still have these stories. You can learn from them, you can experience them, and you get closer to people as well. And I think that's a lot of problems get solved when we come together as people and be strong together. And I also want, for the last words, I want to emphasize that the pictures I used in my presentation that are not Generation Earth related are actually for Pixabay. It's a website online, and you can use it for your own projects if you want to, because these are all like, free to use pictures, no copyright, and they have a lot of pictures, a lot of cool pictures, a lot of artful pictures. And yeah, you can use that. And I wanted to support this site as well with sharing it. And I also wanted to say to all of you guys, thank you also for listening. Thank you for being giving us this opportunity to be here and telling you this. Thank you so much, all of you. Also, thank you all of the who helped us doing this. All this. Thank you also, Laura, for helping us and giving us this, sharing these questions with us. And also, I want to send you all my best and wishes to all of you guys out there. Because right now, you already know, probably because it's all about the media, the world has this situation now with this virus. And in Austria, we are kind of lucky, I would say. It's not that bad, but in a lot of countries, it's not that good. And I wish you all, you guys, the best and good luck, and that you stay healthy, that your family stays healthy, and that we gonna, yeah, we gonna, so of course survive, or we're gonna get through this together, and if we hold together for this. And yeah, I wish you guys a good evening. Ah, sorry.
It was an honor. Thank you so much for sharing all this very valuable information. I'm sure this information will be replicated by our scouts and non-scouts who joined the session. So once again, thank you. We hope to see you guys again. And people, please stay safe, stay home, and take care, and see you next time. Stay tuned to the JOTI. We are all already coming to the end, but we had a total blast, and it was so fun. So thank you once again, and see you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Guys, bye.